I slammed the for sale sign into the front yard of my own home, the house I'd lived in for 42 years, and I didn't shed a single tear. My daughter-in-law hid my groceries in the garage like I was a stranger. My son watched it happen and said nothing, so I sold the family home. But what they didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I still had the signed agreement from 7 years ago. The one where they promised to pay me back every cent I gave them. They forgot about that paper. I didn't. Comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and follow my channel so you don't miss what happens next. I stood in my kitchen at 6:30 in the morning, rolling cookie dough with flour on my hands and tears. I refused to let fall. Not yet. Not until I understood what was happening to me. My name is Margaret Whitmore. I'm 71 years old. I buried my husband 4 years ago, raised one son, helped buy him his first house, paid bills. He never asked me to see. Watched his children so he could build a career, and spent every holiday cooking meals for people who slowly, so slowly, I almost didn't notice, stopped treating me like family. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start with the phone call. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were the days I drove to the farmer's market on Elm Street. I'd been going there for 30 years. Martha Bellingham, the woman who sold the best tomatoes in the county, always saved me a basket. We'd talk for 10 minutes, sometimes 20. She'd ask about Andrew. I'd say he was doing fine. I always said he was doing fine. My phone rang while I was loading the tomatoes into my car. Mom. It was Andrew. Hey, sweetheart, I said. What's going on? It's been a rough week. His voice sounded tired. Not the kind of tired you get from working late. The kind of tired that comes from living with tension you won't talk about. Lauren's overwhelmed. The kids have been sick. I was wondering if maybe you could... I'll be there this afternoon, I said. I didn't even let him finish. That's the thing about mothers like me. We don't wait to be asked properly. We hear the first note of need and we're already packing the car. I drove back home. I spent the next 3 hours cooking. I made Andrew's favorite pot roast with carrots and potatoes, the same recipe his father loved. I baked chocolate chip cookies for my grandson Ethan because that boy could eat a whole tray and still ask for more. I packed fresh vegetables, fruits, a loaf of homemade bread, and 2 containers of soup. I loaded everything into my car like I was preparing for a mission. Because that's what it felt like. Every time my son called, I treated it like a mission. Like my purpose depended on it. And maybe it did. Because after Richard died, my husband, the man who made me feel like the center of the universe for 40 years, I didn't know who I was anymore. The house was too quiet. The bed was too big. The mornings were too long. Andrew became the reason I kept moving. His family became my project. And I refused to see that I had slowly become their convenience. I pulled into their driveway around 2 o'clock. I remember because the sun was hitting the front windows and I could see movement inside. I grabbed 2 bags of groceries from the trunk and walked to the front door. It was unlocked. I didn't knock. I never knocked. For the past 7 years since they bought this house with my help, I should add, I'd walked in and out like it was an extension of my own home. Because in my mind it was. I stepped inside and started walking toward the kitchen. And then I heard it. Lauren's voice. Light. Casual. The way someone talks when they don't think anyone important is listening. She can keep her food in the garage. I stopped. My hands tightened around the grocery bags. The kitchen refrigerator is for our family. There was another voice, a friend of hers, someone I didn't recognize. Doesn't she come over like every week? The friend asked. Lauren laughed. Not a cruel laugh. Worse. An annoyed one. Like I was a minor inconvenience she'd learned to manage. More like every other day, Lauren said. She shows up with bags of food like we can't feed ourselves. Last week she rearranged my entire spice rack. I had to redo the whole thing after she left. Did you say anything to her? To Margaret, Lauren snorted. You can't say anything to Margaret. She'll cry. Then Andrew will feel guilty. Then I'm the bad guy. It's easier to just let her do her thing and move the stuff later. Move the stuff. Yeah, I take whatever she puts in the fridge and move it to the garage, the old refrigerator out there. She doesn't even notice. I stood completely still. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I just stood there holding grocery bags full of food. I'd spent 3 hours preparing, and I listened to my daughter-in-law explain how she managed me. Like a problem. Like an inconvenience. Like something to be moved out of sight. And then I saw him. Ethan, my grandson, was standing at the edge of the hallway just a few feet from the kitchen door. I was 10 years old enough to understand what he was hearing, old enough to see me standing there with bags in my hands and shock on my face. Our eyes met, and I watched something break in that child's face. Not because he was angry at his mother, because he was ashamed. Ashamed for me. A 10-year-old boy felt ashamed on behalf of his grandmother, and that was the moment something cracked inside me that I knew would never fully heal. I didn't confront Lauren. I didn't walk into the kitchen. I didn't say a word. I turned around, walked outside, opened the garage, placed my groceries inside the old refrigerator, the one Lauren had designated for me, and I closed the door. Then I got in my car and drove home. The entire drive I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I kept hearing her words. The kitchen refrigerator is for our family. Our family. Not including me. After everything I had done, the money, the time, the meals, the babysitting, the emotional labor, the holidays. I hosted the birthdays. I planned the mortgage payments. I helped cover when Andrew lost his job 8 years ago. After all of it, I was not part of our family. I was the woman whose food belonged in the garage. When I got home, I sat at the kitchen table. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't eat. I just sat there in the dark asking myself a question I had been avoiding for years. When did I become invisible? Was it when Lauren started forgetting to invite me to Ethan's school events? Was it when Andrew stopped calling me on Sundays, something we'd done every week since he left for college? Was it when they remodeled the guest room, the room I used to stay in when I visited, and turned it into Lauren's home office without telling me? Was it when Lauren stopped using my name and started calling me Andrew's mom when she talked to her friends? Or was it earlier? Was it the moment I handed them that check? I need to tell you about the check. 7 years ago, Andrew and Lauren decided to renovate their home. New kitchen, new bathrooms, a deck in the backyard. They got quotes. The numbers came back high. Andrew called me on a Wednesday night, and I could hear Lauren coaching him in the background. "Just ask her," Lauren whispered. She thought I couldn't hear, but I heard everything. "Mom," Andrew said, "we're in a bit of a tight spot with the renovation." "How much do you need?" "It's a lot, Mom." "Andrew, how much?" He paused. $87,000. I closed my eyes. That was more than half of what Richard and I had saved over the past decade. Money we set aside for emergencies, for our retirement, for the uncertain years that come when your body starts slowing down and the world starts speeding up. "I'll write you a check," I said. "Mom, we'll pay you back, every cent, I promise." "I know you will, sweetheart." Lauren and I talked about it. We want to put it in writing, make it official. That surprised me. It was Lauren's idea, I was sure of it. Not because she wanted to protect me, but because she wanted to establish that this was a loan, not a gift. She wanted to make sure I couldn't hold it over them. What she didn't realize was that the document she insisted on would eventually become the one thing I could hold on to. We signed the agreement at my kitchen table. Andrew, Lauren, and me. Richard was there too. He didn't say much, he never did in those situations. But after they left, he looked at me and said something I didn't understand at the time. "Margaret, you need to stop trying to buy their love." "I'm not buying anything," I said. "I'm helping our son." Richard shook his head. "You're helping Lauren get a new kitchen." "It's their kitchen." "No," he said quietly. "It's her kitchen. And one day, she's going to remind you of that." Richard died 2 years later. I never told Andrew what his father said. But I thought about it every single day, especially on the days when I stood in that kitchen, Lauren's kitchen, and felt like a guest. After I sat in the dark for an hour that night, I got up and walked to the hallway closet. There was a box on the top shelf, an old file box that Richard had kept organized with labels and tabs. He was meticulous that way. Everything in its place, every document accounted for. I pulled down the box and opened it. And there it was. The loan agreement. $87,000. Signed by Andrew. Signed by Lauren. Witnessed by Richard. 7 years had passed. Not a single dollar had been repaid. I hadn't asked. Not once. Because I was being a good mother. A patient mother. The kind of mother who gives and gives and never asks for anything in return. But sitting there in the dark, holding that document, I realized something that made my stomach turn. I wasn't being patient. I was being erased. Every time I didn't ask for the money, I taught them that my generosity had no limits. Every time I showed up with groceries and smiled through Lauren's cold greetings, I taught them that my feelings didn't matter. Every time Andrew forgot to call, and I made excuses for him, I taught him that I would always be there no matter how he treated me. I had trained my own son to take me for granted, and Lauren had simply followed his lead. The next morning I called Rebecca Collins. Rebecca had been my attorney for 20 years. She handled Richard's estate. She knew me. She knew my family. She knew I was not a woman who acted on impulse. "Rebecca, I need to see you. Today." "Margaret, is everything all right?" "No," I said, "but it's going to be." I sat in Rebecca's office at 10 o'clock. I placed the loan agreement on her desk. She read it carefully. She looked at the signatures. She checked the date. "This is legally binding," she said. "I know. You've never attempted to collect." "No." "Why now?" I looked at her, and for the first time in months I said what I was actually feeling. "Because my daughter-in-law told her friend that the kitchen refrigerator is for our family, and I realized that after everything I've given them, I'm not part of that family anymore." Rebecca sat back in her chair. "Margaret, if we move forward with this, it could damage your relationship with Andrew. Permanently." "Rebecca, my relationship with Andrew is already damaged. He just doesn't know it yet. Because I've been pretending everything is fine. I've been showing up with groceries and smiles and acting like nothing hurts. But everything hurts. And I'm done pretending." She nodded slowly. "What exactly do you want to do?" "I want you to send them a formal notice. 30 days to begin repayment. And if they don't, then we pursue every legal option available." Rebecca looked at me for a long time. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." But the loan wasn't the only decision I made that day. On the drive home from Rebecca's office, I passed a real estate office on Main Street. I'd driven past it 1,000 times, never thought twice about it. But this time, I pulled over. I sat in the car for 10 minutes. I looked at the sign in the window. I thought about my house, the house where Richard proposed to me in the backyard, the house where Andrew took his first steps in the living room, the house where I hosted Thanksgiving for 35 years straight. And then I thought about the last 4 years. The silence of those rooms since Richard died. The emptiness of Sunday mornings with no one to share coffee with. The way I wandered from room to room, looking for purpose, and finding nothing but memories that reminded me of everything I'd lost. I walked into the real estate office. A woman named Claire greeted me. "I'd like to sell my home," I said. She looked surprised. "That's a big decision. Have you been thinking about this for a while?" "For about 12 hours, I said. She paused. "Would you like to sit down and talk about it?" "No," I said. "I'd like to schedule an appraisal." Claire came to my house 3 days later. She walked through every room. She took measurements. She opened closets. She looked at the foundation, the roof, the plumbing. When she was done, she sat with me in the living room. "Mrs. Whitmore, this is a beautiful home. Great bones. This neighborhood has appreciated significantly. You could get a very strong offer." "Good. Can I ask, why are you selling?" I looked at the wall where Richard's favorite painting hung. A simple landscape. Nothing expensive. He bought it at a yard sale in 1989 because he said it reminded him of the place where we had our first date. "Because this house used to feel like home," I said. "Now it feels like a museum. And I don't want to spend the rest of my life being a curator of my own past." Claire nodded. "I understand." "I doubt you do," I said, not unkindly. "But I appreciate you saying that." That night, I couldn't sleep. I got up at 2 in the morning and walked through the house. I touched the kitchen counter where Richard and I used to sit and talk after Andrew went to bed. I stood in the doorway of Andrew's old bedroom, still painted blue, still with the faded baseball wallpaper he picked out when he was 9. I opened the closet in the hallway and found a box of Richard's things. His reading glasses, his old watch, a birthday card I'd given him on his 70th birthday. Inside I had written, "To the man who made every room I walk into feel like home, I love you forever." I held that card for a long time, and then I put it back in the box, because Richard was gone, and the home he made for me, the feeling of belonging, of being seen, of being valued, that had gone with him. What remained was a house, just a house, and a family that had learned to live without me while I was still alive. 2 days later, Andrew called. Not because he sensed something was wrong, not because he missed me, because Ethan had a school project and needed poster board. "Mom, do you have any of that thick poster board, the white kind? Ethan needs it for tomorrow." "I do," I said. "Great. Can you drop it off?" Not, "Can I come pick it up?" Not, "Can I stop by and see you?" Not, "Hey Mom, how are you doing? Can you drop it off?" "Sure," I said. "I'll bring it over." "Thanks, Mom. You're a lifesaver." I hung up the phone and stood still for a moment. A lifesaver. That's what I was to them. A convenience store, a supply closet, a backup plan. I drove the poster board to Andrew's house. I rang the doorbell this time. I didn't walk in. Lauren opened the door. "Oh, hey, Margaret. Andrew said you were dropping something off." She didn't invite me in. She stood in the doorway, my son's doorway, the doorway of a house I helped pay for, and she waited for me to hand her the poster board. "Here you go," I said. "Thanks. Ethan's working on it upstairs." "Can I see him?" She hesitated, just for a second, but I caught it. "He's kind of in the zone right now. You know how kids are with projects." "Of course," I said. "Tell him Grandma says hi." "Will do." She started to close the door. "Lauren." She stopped. "Yes." I looked at her. I wanted to say everything. I wanted to ask her why she hid my food. I wanted to ask her when she decided I didn't belong in her kitchen. I wanted to ask her if she remembered the $87,000. I wanted to ask her if she ever thought about what it felt like to be the person who gives everything and gets moved to the garage. But I didn't, because I wasn't ready yet. "Nothing," I said. "Have a good night." She closed the door. I stood on the porch for a moment. I could hear Ethan laughing inside. I could hear the television. I could hear the sounds of a family living their life, without me. I walked back to my car. I sat behind the wheel, and I made a promise to myself. The next time I stood on that porch, everything would be different. They just didn't know it yet. I drove home and I called Rebecca. "It's Margaret. Send the letter." "Margaret, I want to make sure you've thought about—" "Rebecca, send the letter." There was a pause. "Yes, ma'am." I hung up the phone. Then I called Claire. "List the house." "Mrs. Whitmore, are you certain? Once we list things, move fast in this market." "Good," I said. "I've been standing still long enough." I sat down at my kitchen table. The same table where Andrew ate his first solid food. The same table where Richard and I signed our mortgage. The same table where I signed that loan agreement 7 years ago. I placed my hands flat on the surface. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel sad. I felt awake. I had spent so long pouring myself into other people that I had become hollow. A shell of the woman I used to be. Richard would not have recognized me, not because I looked different, but because the woman he married would never have let anyone put her groceries in the garage. The woman he married would have walked into that kitchen and said, "Excuse me." The woman he married would have looked Lauren in the eye and said, "This is not how you treat the person who helped put a roof over your head." But grief changes you. Loneliness softens your edges. The fear of losing the only family you have left makes you swallow things you should spit out. I was done swallowing. The next day, I went to the bank. I sat down with a financial advisor and reviewed my accounts. I wanted to understand exactly where I stood. The truth surprised me. Despite the $87,000 I'd given Andrew and Lauren, despite the years of groceries and gifts and medical bills and everything else, I was in better shape than I thought. Richard had been careful with our money. The house was paid off. My pension was steady. Social Security covered the basics. If I sold the house and downsized, I would be comfortable. More than comfortable. I wouldn't need Andrew's repayment to survive. But that wasn't the point. The point was that they owed me. Not just money. They owed me respect. They owed me honesty. They owed me the basic dignity of not hiding my food like I was a stray cat they were trying to discourage from coming back. And if they couldn't give me those things voluntarily, then I would remind them through the one language Lauren seemed to understand that I was not a woman to be dismissed. The listing went live on a Thursday. I didn't tell Andrew. I didn't tell anyone. But in a town like ours, news travels. And 3 days after the listing went up, my phone rang. It was my neighbor, Dorothy. "Margaret, is it true you're selling the house?" "It's true." "But why, you've been there forever." "That's exactly why, Dorothy. Forever is a long time to stay somewhere you're not happy." She was quiet for a moment. "Does Andrew know?" "He will." I hung up and looked out the window. Somewhere across town, a letter was sitting in a mailbox. 30 days. The clock was ticking. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I was the one in control. Not Lauren, not Andrew, not grief, not guilt, not the desperate need to be needed. Me, Margaret Whitmore, the woman who finally remembered her own name. The letter landed on a Friday. I know because Rebecca called me at 4:17 in the afternoon and said, "It's been delivered. Signature confirmed. Lauren signed for it." Lauren, not Andrew. Lauren was the one who opened that envelope, which meant Lauren was the one who read it first. And I can only imagine what her face looked like when she saw the number. $87,000. 30 days. Sincerely, the law office of Rebecca Collins, on behalf of Margaret Whitmore. I sat in my living room and waited. I didn't have to wait long. My phone rang at 4:39. 22 minutes. That's how long it took for the panic to set in. It was Andrew. I let it ring. It rang 6 times and went to voicemail. He called again. I let it ring again. The 3rd time he left a message. I played it on speaker and listened to my son's voice fill the room. "Mom, I just got home and Lauren showed me this letter from a lawyer. Your lawyer. Mom, what is going on? This has to be some kind of mistake. Call me back, please." His voice cracked on that last word. Please. I played the message again. Not because I enjoyed it. I want to be very clear about that. I did not enjoy hearing my son's voice shake. But I needed to listen for something specific. And I found it. Or rather, I didn't find it. Not once in that message did Andrew say, "Mom, are you okay?" Not once did he say, "Mom, did something happen?" Not once did he say, "Mom, talk to me. I'm worried about you." He said, "What is going on?" He said, "This has to be a mistake." Because in Andrew's mind, his mother demanding what she was owed, that was the mistake. Not the years of silence. Not Lauren's cruelty. Not the garage refrigerator. The mistake was Margaret finally standing up. I turned off my phone. That night, I cooked dinner for one. Grilled chicken, steamed broccoli, a glass of white wine. I sat at my kitchen table and ate slowly. I tasted every bite. I can't explain why, but food tasted different that evening. Like my senses had been muted for years, and someone had finally turned the volume back up. After dinner, I washed my plate, dried it, and put it away. Then I walked to the hallway and looked at the for sale sign leaning against the wall. Claire had scheduled the first showing for Monday. Monday. 3 days away. I went to bed at 9 o'clock and slept better than I had in 4 years. Saturday morning came and I turned my phone back on. 14 missed calls, 9 from Andrew, 3 from Lauren, 2 from a number I didn't recognize, and 1 text message from Ethan. "Grandma, Dad is really upset. Are you mad at us? I love you." I read that message 11 times. Then I typed back, "I love you too, sweetheart. More than anything. This is between the grown-ups. You did nothing wrong." I hit send. Then I deleted every voicemail from Andrew and Lauren without listening to them. Not because I was being cruel, Because I already knew what they would say. I had spent 42 years studying my son. I knew his patterns better than he knew himself. The first stage would be confusion, then denial, then anger, then bargaining. He would cycle through all of them before he ever got to the one thing I actually needed. Accountability. At 11 o'clock on Saturday morning, someone knocked on my door. I was in the kitchen making tea. The knock was loud, aggressive. Not the way someone knocks when they want to visit. The way someone knocks when they feel entitled to enter. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Andrew. He knocked again. Harder. Mom, I know you're in there. Your car is in the driveway. Open the door. I stood there. Mom, please, we need to talk about this letter. I put my hand on the doorknob, but I didn't turn it. Andrew, I said through the door. Lower your voice. Mom, open the door. Not until you lower your voice. There was a pause. I heard him exhale. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, but I could hear the tension underneath it, like a wire pulled too tight. Mom, can we please talk? I opened the door. My son stood on my porch, looking like he hadn't slept. His eyes were red. His hair was uncombed. He was wearing the same shirt I'd seen him in 2 days ago, when I dropped off the poster board. Come in, I said. He walked past me into the kitchen. I followed him. I didn't offer him coffee. I didn't offer him food. For the first time in his life, Andrew walked into my kitchen, and I didn't immediately try to feed him. He noticed. He sat down at the table and put the letter in front of me, as if I didn't know what was in it. Mom, what is this? It's a formal notice of repayment. I can see that. Why? Because you owe me $87,000, Andrew. Mom. He rubbed his face with both hands. We talked about this. When we borrowed that money, you said, I said I would be patient. I've been patient for 7 years. So why now? Why a lawyer? Why not just call me and say, hey, I need the money back? I looked at him. Would you have taken me seriously? He opened his mouth, then he closed it, because we both knew the answer. Andrew, when was the last time you took anything I said seriously? Mom, that's not fair. When was the last time you called me just to ask how I was doing? Not because you needed poster board. Not because you needed someone to watch Ethan. When was the last time you called me because you missed me? He stared at the table. That's what I thought, I said. Mom, this isn't about phone calls. This is about you sending a legal letter to your own son. No, Andrew. This is about your wife telling her friend that the kitchen refrigerator is for our family, and I'm apparently not part of that family. The color drained from his face. Not the slow fade of someone processing information. The sudden drop of someone who just realized they've been caught. What are you talking about? He said, but his voice was different now, thinner, defensive. I was there, Andrew. Tuesday afternoon. I brought groceries. I walked in, and I heard Lauren telling her friend that she moves my food to the garage because the kitchen fridge is for your family. I heard every word. He didn't speak. And your son heard it too. Andrew closed his eyes. Ethan was standing right there. He looked at me, Andrew. He looked at his grandmother holding bags of food she spent 3 hours making, and he heard his mother say, I wasn't family. Mom, Lauren didn't mean it like that. How did she mean it? She was just venting. You know how she is. She says things she doesn't. Stop. I held up my hand. Do not sit in my kitchen and make excuses for her. Not today. I'm not making excuses. You are. You've been making excuses for 7 years. Every time she excluded me from a holiday dinner. Every time she conveniently forgot to mention Ethan's school plays. Every time she stood in the doorway of the house I helped pay for and treated me like a delivery person. Andrew's jaw tightened. You knew Andrew. You knew how she treated me, and you chose to say nothing because it was easier. Because keeping Lauren happy was more important than protecting your mother. That's not true. Then tell me one time. One single time you stood up for me. Silence. Tell me one time Lauren dismissed me in front of you and you said, that's my mother. Don't talk to her like that. Silence. Tell me one time she rearranged something I did, or canceled plans I was part of, or talked about me like I was a burden, and you stepped in. He looked at the floor. You can't, I said, because it never happened. Andrew sat there for a long time. I watched him. I watched the way his hands pressed against the table. I watched the muscle in his jaw twitch. I watched him struggle with something he had probably known for years, but had never been forced to face. Mom, he said finally, I'm sorry. For what exactly? For not saying anything. That's a start, but it's not enough. What do you want me to do? I want you to repay the loan. That's what the letter says. Mom, we don't have $87,000. Then make arrangements. The letter gives you 30 days to start repayment, not 30 days to pay in full. Rebecca will work with you on a payment plan. And if we can't, then we'll have a different conversation. Andrew looked at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Not anger, not frustration. Fear. My son was afraid of me, and I realized that was the first time in his adult life he had ever seen me as someone with power. There's something else, I said. What? I'm selling the house. He blinked. What? This house. I'm selling it. Mom, no. You can't sell the house. This is our house. This is where I grew up. This is where This is where your father and I built a life, and your father is gone. And the life we built here, the family we raised, that family doesn't exist anymore. Not the way it used to. Mom, please don't do this. It's already done. The listing goes live Monday. Andrew stood up so fast, the chair scraped against the floor. This is insane. You're making decisions you can't take back because your feelings got hurt. I stood up too. My feelings got hurt, I repeated. Andrew, I was humiliated. In your home, by your wife, in front of your child. And you're going to stand here and reduce that to hurt feelings. I didn't mean. Your father once told me that the day would come when Lauren would remind me that her kitchen was not my kitchen. I didn't believe him, but he was right. He was right about everything. Andrew's face crumbled. Bringing up Richard was like striking a match in a room full of gasoline. Andrew worshipped his father. The mention of Richard's name, especially the suggestion that Richard had seen what was coming and tried to warn me, that hit Andrew harder than any legal letter ever could. Dad said that, Andrew whispered. The night we signed the loan agreement, after you and Lauren left. He looked at me and said I was trying to buy your love, and I told him he was wrong. I paused. I wasn't wrong. Andrew sat back down. He put his head in his hands. And for the first time since he was a teenager, my son cried in front of me. I didn't comfort him. Not because I didn't want to. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to walk around that table, put my arms around him, and tell him everything was going to be okay. But I didn't, because I had spent a lifetime comforting Andrew at the expense of myself. Every time he cried, I dried his tears. Every time he failed, I cushioned his fall. Every time his life got hard, I showed up with groceries and smiles and money and time, and I made it easier. And all that comfort had produced a man who couldn't stand up for his own mother. So I sat still. I let him cry. And I let the silence do what I couldn't. After a few minutes, Andrew wiped his eyes and looked at me. What happens now? Now you go home, you talk to Lauren, you figure out how to handle the repayment, and you think about what kind of relationship you want to have with me going forward. What does that mean? It means I'm not going anywhere, Andrew. I'm still your mother, but I'm done being the mother who gets pushed into the garage. He nodded. He stood up. He walked to the door, and then he turned around and asked me the question he should have asked 20 minutes ago. Mom, are you okay? I looked at my son. I'm getting there, I said. He left. I closed the door behind him and leaned against it. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. The adrenaline that had carried me through that conversation drained out of me all at once, and I felt like I might collapse. But I didn't. I walked back to the kitchen, sat down, and finished my tea. It was cold. I drank it anyway. The next 2 days were quiet. Sunday came and went. No phone call from Andrew. No call from Lauren. No texts except one more from Ethan asking if he could come visit soon. I told him yes, anytime. Monday morning, Claire put the listing online. By Monday afternoon, I had 4 showing requests. By Monday evening, my phone rang. It was Lauren. I answered. Margaret. Her voice was different, controlled, measured. The voice of a woman who had rehearsed exactly what she was going to say. Lauren. I think we need to talk, woman to woman. Go ahead. Can I come over? I thought about it. Part of me wanted to say no, but another part of me, the part that needed to look this woman in the eye and say what I'd been holding for years, that part said yes. Come over at 7. She arrived at exactly 7 o'clock. Not 6:55. Not 7:05. Exactly 7. Punctual in a way she never was when I invited her to my dinners or my holidays. I opened the door. She was dressed carefully, hair done, light makeup. She looked like she was going to a job interview, not visiting her mother-in-law. Come in, I said. She walked in and immediately looked around. I could see her eyes scanning the rooms, looking at the furniture, looking at the walls. I knew what she was doing. She was trying to calculate how much the house was worth, what it would sell for, how much of that money might solve the problem of the $87,000. I almost laughed. Sit down, I said. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where her husband had cried 24 hours earlier. Margaret, I want to apologize. For what? She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, but I caught it. For what you overheard at our house. What I overheard, I repeated. Yes, I was talking to my friend and I said some things that came out wrong. What part came out wrong, Lauren? The part where you said the kitchen refrigerator was for our family, or the part where you told her you move my food to the garage after I leave? She pressed her lips together. I was frustrated, Margaret. You come over a lot, and sometimes it feels like our space isn't really ours. Your space, the space I helped pay for. I know you helped with the renovation, and we're grateful for that. Are you? Because grateful people don't hide food in the garage. Grateful people don't stand in the doorway and refuse to let someone in. Grateful people say thank you, Lauren. When was the last time you said thank you to me? She opened her mouth. Not a polite thank you because Andrew was watching. A real thank you. A genuine, honest-to-God acknowledgement that without my money, your kitchen wouldn't exist. Your bathrooms wouldn't exist. That deck where you host your friends for barbecues that you never invite me to, that wouldn't exist. Lauren's composure cracked, just slightly. A tightness around her eyes, a stiffness in her shoulders. Margaret, I didn't come here to fight. Neither did I. I came here to sell my house and collect what I'm owed. That's actually what I wanted to talk about. The money. What about it? We don't have $87,000. I'm aware. Andrew and I have been talking. We can start making monthly payments. Small ones at first. Maybe $500 a month. I did the math in my head. $500 a month. That was 14 years and change to repay the full amount. I would be 85 years old. $500 a month, I said. It's what we can manage right now. Lauren, you just took your family to Hawaii last spring. Her face went red. That trip cost at least $8,000. You posted pictures every single day. You rented a house on the beach. You took a helicopter tour. That was a family vacation. A family vacation you took while owing your mother-in-law $87,000. And now you're telling me $500 a month is all you can manage. She didn't respond. Let me ask you something, Lauren. If you owed a bank $87,000, would you go to Hawaii? That's different. How? Because you're family. I leaned forward. Am I? Because last Tuesday you told your friend I wasn't. She flinched. You can't have it both ways, I said. You can't treat me like a stranger when it's convenient and call me family when you need me to be patient. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Lauren sat very still. I watched her processing. I could see the gears turning. She was trying to find the angle, the approach that would make this go away without actually changing anything. What do you want, Margaret? I want $1,500 a month, and I want it in writing, a formal repayment agreement through Rebecca. $1,500 we can't. Cancel the country club membership. She stared at me. Cancel the landscaping service. You have 2 arms and a lawnmower. Cancel the wine subscription. Cancel whatever you need to cancel. But you will pay me $1,500 a month, and you will do it on time every single month until the debt is settled. Lauren's eyes narrowed. And right there, right in that tiny shift, I saw it. The real Lauren. Not the rehearsed version. Not the careful, measured woman who walked through my door. The real one. The one who resented me. The one who saw me as an obstacle, a nuisance, an old woman who wouldn't just disappear quietly. And if we don't agree to $1,500, then Rebecca moves forward. And trust me, Lauren, you don't want Rebecca moving forward. Is that a threat? It's a fact. We stared at each other across my kitchen table. 2 women who had spent 7 years pretending to get along. 2 women who had smiled at each other across holiday dinners and birthday parties and Sunday brunches, while something ugly grew between us, like mold behind a wall. Fine, Lauren said. $1,500 a month. Starting in 30 days. Fine. She stood up. She grabbed her purse. She walked toward the door. Lauren. She stopped but didn't turn around. This isn't about money, I said. It was never about money. It's about the fact that you made me feel like I didn't belong in my own son's life, and my son let you do it. She turned around, and for just a second, one brief, unguarded second, I saw something in her eyes that surprised me. Not anger. Guilt. It vanished quickly. She covered it up with a tight smile and a nod. Good night, Margaret. Good night, Lauren. She left. I locked the door behind her. Then I sat back down and started shaking. Not from fear, not from anger, from the sheer, overwhelming weight of saying things I had swallowed for 7 years. Every word I spoke to Lauren had been sitting inside me like stones in a jar. And now that the jar was empty, I felt lighter. But I also felt bruised, like I'd been punched from the inside out. That week, the showing started. Strangers walked through my home. They opened cabinets. They checked the water pressure. They commented on the hardwood floors that Richard had installed himself on his hands and knees, 1 plank at a time. I stayed out of the house during the showings. I went to the library. I sat in the park. I drove to the cemetery and visited Richard. I stood at his grave and talked to him. You were right, I said. About everything. About Lauren. About Andrew. About the kitchen. The wind blew across the grass. I'm selling the house, Richard. I know you'd understand. You always said a house is just lumber and nails. Home is wherever we feel safe. I paused. I don't feel safe there anymore. I stayed at the cemetery for an hour. Then I drove home and found a voicemail from Claire. Margaret, we have 2 offers already, both above asking. Can you call me back? 2 offers, above asking, in 4 days. I called Claire back. Tell me about the offers. The first is from an investment company. They want to flip the house. They're offering 12% above asking. No, I said immediately. I won't sell to someone who's going to gut this house and turn it into something Richard wouldn't recognize. The second offer is from a young couple, Jeremy and Sarah. They have a baby girl. They offered 8% above asking. They wrote you a letter. A letter. They do that sometimes, personal letters, to make their offer stand out. Read it to me. Claire read the letter. Jeremy and Sarah were both teachers. They'd been renting for 6 years, saving everything they could. The baby was their first. They wrote about how they walked through the house and felt something they couldn't explain. They said the house felt loved. They said they wanted their daughter to grow up in a home with that kind of history. I cried, right there on the phone. I cried. Because that's what the house deserved. Not investors, not flippers, a family. A real family that would fill those rooms with the same kind of love Richard and I had built. Accept their offer, I said. Margaret, the other offer is significantly higher. Accept their offer, Claire. She paused. Yes, ma'am. I hung up the phone and sat in Richard's old recliner. The one he sat in every evening to watch the news. The one that still smelled faintly like his aftershave if you pressed your face into the headrest. I pressed my face into the headrest. and I said goodbye. 2 weeks later, Andrew came to see me again. This time was different. He didn't knock aggressively. He didn't demand anything. He stood on my porch with his hands in his pockets and his head slightly bowed like a child who'd been sent to the principal's office. "Can I come in?" "Yes." He sat down at the kitchen table. I noticed he looked thinner, tired in a way that went deeper than lack of sleep. "Mom, I talked to Lauren." "I know. She came to see me. She told me about your conversation." "Good. Mom, I want to say something, and I need you to hear me." I waited. "I messed up." I didn't respond. I let him keep going. "I heard her, that day. The refrigerator thing. I wasn't in the room, but I heard her talking to her friend about it later that night. She told me she had been moving your food to the garage for months." My stomach dropped. "You knew. I knew. For how long?" He looked at the table. "About 4 months. 4 months. For 4 months my son knew his wife was hiding my food in the garage, and he said nothing. For 4 months I drove across town, carried bags of groceries, cooked meals, baked cookies, and my son knew that everything I brought was being moved to the garage like garbage." "Why?" I asked. My voice was barely a whisper. "Because Lauren said it wasn't a big deal. She said you wouldn't notice. She said it was just about refrigerator space." "And you believed her?" "I wanted to believe her, because the alternative was admitting that my wife doesn't respect my mother, and I didn't know how to deal with that." "So you dealt with it by doing nothing?" "Yes." "For 4 months?" "Yes." I stood up. I walked to the sink. I ran cold water over my hands. I needed to feel something physical, because the emotional pain was threatening to swallow me whole. My son, my only child. The baby I held in my arms 39 years ago. The boy I taught to ride a bicycle. The teenager I drove to college. The man I helped buy a house. He knew, and he chose silence. "Andrew," I said without turning around. "Do you understand what you just told me?" "Yes." "You chose Lauren's comfort over my dignity." "I know. For 4 months, I walked into that house, feeling like something was wrong, but telling myself I was imagining it. Wondering why the refrigerator never had my food in it. Thinking maybe Lauren had used it or given it away to neighbors. Making up excuses in my head so I wouldn't have to face the possibility that I wasn't welcome. "Mom. And the whole time you knew." I turned around and looked at him. "That's worse than what Lauren did, Andrew. What Lauren did was unkind. What you did was a betrayal." He nodded. His eyes were wet. "I know. No, you don't know. You can't know. Because you've never been 71 years old widowed living alone and holding on to your son as the last connection you have to the family you built. You've never driven across town with a car full of love and walked into a house where that love gets shoved into a garage. You don't know what that feels like. But I do." He broke. Full open shaking sobs. The kind a grown man only cries when the walls he's built around his guilt finally collapse. I stood at the sink and watched him. And then I did something that surprised us both. I walked over, pulled out the chair beside him, sat down, and took his hand. Not because he deserved it. Because I deserved to be the kind of mother who could hold her son's hand while also holding him accountable. Those two things didn't have to cancel each other out. "I'm not punishing you," I said quietly. "I'm saving myself." He looked at me. "I'm selling this house because I need to start over. Not from you. From who I became trying to keep everyone happy. I lost myself, Andrew. Somewhere between your father's death and Lauren's kitchen, I lost the woman I used to be. And I need to find her. Can I help? You can start by being honest with me. Always. Even when it's hard. Even when Lauren doesn't want you to. I will. And you can pay me back." He let out a choked laugh. $1,500 a month. Lauren told you. She told me everything. Good. He squeezed my hand. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you are. Can you forgive me?" I looked at our hands. His large hand wrapped around my smaller one. The same hand that used to grip my finger when he was an infant. "I already have," I said. "But forgiveness doesn't mean I'm going to let this happen again. If Lauren hides my food, if she shuts a door in my face, if she makes me feel like I'm less than I need to hear from you. Not silence, not excuses, words, actual words. You will. Promise me. I promise. I nodded. Now go home to your wife and your son, and tell Ethan I'm making his cookies next weekend. Andrew stood up. He leaned down and kissed the top of my head, something he hadn't done in years. I love you, Mom. I love you too. Now go. He left. And I sat at that table for a long time thinking. Not about the house, not about the money, not about Lauren, about Richard. I thought about the last Christmas we spent together. He was already sick, though we didn't know how sick yet. He sat in his recliner watching Ethan open presents, and he turned to me and said, "Margaret, when I'm gone, don't let anyone make you small." I thought I understood what he meant at the time. I didn't. I didn't understand until I was standing in a garage placing my groceries into a refrigerator that someone else had decided was my designated spot. Don't let anyone make you small. I had let them. For years. And now I was unmaking it. Not with rage. Not with revenge. With clarity. The closing date for the house was set for 6 weeks out. Jeremy and Sarah's loan was approved. The paperwork was moving. Claire called me every few days with updates, and every update felt like another step toward something I couldn't quite name yet. Freedom, maybe. Or just peace. One evening, about 3 weeks before closing, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked to the door and opened it. Dorothy, my neighbor. The woman who had lived next door to me for 28 years. She was holding a casserole. "I heard you're really leaving," she said. "I am." "Then I'm coming in, and we're eating this casserole together, and you're going to tell me everything." I laughed, a real laugh, the kind I hadn't felt in months. "Come in, Dorothy." We sat at the kitchen table and ate her terrible casserole. Dorothy was many things, but a cook was not one of them, and I told her everything. The groceries, the garage, Lauren, Andrew, the loan, the lawyer, the house. Dorothy listened without interrupting. When I finished, she put her fork down and looked at me. "Margaret, I'm going to tell you something and I need you not to get mad. No promises. I've been watching you shrink for 4 years. Ever since Richard died. You got smaller, quieter. You stopped arguing about politics. You stopped complaining about the neighbor's dog. You stopped being Margaret. I was grieving. You were grieving for the first year. After that you were hiding. Hiding behind your son. Hiding behind being needed. Hiding because you were terrified that if you stopped being useful, nobody would come see you at all." I stared at her. "Am I wrong?" she asked. "No," I said quietly. "You're not wrong. So this, the house, the lawyer, standing up for yourself. This is good, Margaret. This is you coming back." It doesn't feel like coming back. It feels like burning everything down. Sometimes that's the same thing. We finished the casserole. Dorothy hugged me at the door and said, "Wherever you move, you better not be more than 20 minutes away." 15, I said. "That's my girl." She left, and I stood in the doorway of my home, looking out at the street where I'd lived for more than 4 decades, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Gratitude. Not for the pain. Not for Lauren's cruelty, or Andrew's silence, or the lonely nights, or the hidden groceries. Gratitude for the crack. Because the crack is what let the light in. Without the crack, I would have kept going, kept driving across town, kept carrying bags, kept smiling through the dismissals and the slights and the slow, quiet erasure of who I was. I would have kept being useful until I had nothing left. And then they would have discarded me entirely. The crack saved me. Lauren's words in that kitchen, those careless, cruel, ordinary words, they broke something inside me. And from that broken place, something new was already starting to grow. I just had to be brave enough to let it. The first payment arrived on the 28th day. $1,500, direct deposit, right on time. I looked at the notification on my phone. Then I looked at the empty boxes stacked against the living room wall. Packing materials, tape, markers, Tomorrow I would start packing 42 years into cardboard boxes. Tomorrow I would decide what to keep and what to leave behind. But tonight, I sat in Richard's chair one last time. I pressed my face into the headrest. I breathed in the last trace of his aftershave. And I whispered, I didn't let them make me small. Then I closed my eyes and let the silence hold me. Not the heavy silence of loneliness. The quiet, steady silence of a woman who had finally found her own voice and was learning day by day how to use it. I started packing on a Wednesday. I thought it would take a few days, maybe a week. I figured I'd move through the rooms quickly, fill boxes, label them, stack them by the door, and drive them to the new apartment in batches. I was wrong. The first box took me 4 hours, not because I had too much to pack, because every item I picked up carried a weight that had nothing to do with how much it weighed. A coffee mug from our 20th anniversary trip to Maine. Richard bought it at a roadside gift shop because it said "World's Okayest Wife," and he laughed so hard the cashier thought something was wrong with him. A set of Christmas ornaments Andrew made in 2nd grade, lopsided stars covered in glitter that still shed everywhere. A cookbook my mother gave me when I got married with her handwriting in the margins. Add more butter than they say, Margaret. Always more butter. I held each thing, and I asked myself the same question. Does this belong to my past or my future? Most things belonged to my past. I packed them anyway. By Thursday afternoon, I had filled 11 boxes. The living room was half empty. The walls had pale rectangles where frames used to hang. I sat on the floor surrounded by packing tape and bubble wrap, and my phone rang. It was Ethan. Grandma. Hey, sweetheart. Can I come help you pack? My heart twisted. Who told you I was packing? Dad, he said you're moving to an apartment. I am. Is it far? 15 minutes from your school. That's not too bad. No, it's not. There was a pause. I could hear him breathing. The quiet, heavy breathing of a child trying to figure out how to say something difficult. Grandma, I need to tell you something. You can tell me anything, Ethan. I knew about the refrigerator. I closed my eyes. I know you did, sweetheart. You were standing right there. No, I mean before that. I knew before that day. My hand tightened around the phone. What do you mean? I saw Mom do it, like a bunch of times. She'd wait until you left, and then she'd move all the food you brought to the garage. One time I asked her why, and she said the kitchen fridge was too full. But it wasn't, Grandma. I looked. There was plenty of room. I pressed my free hand against the floor to steady myself. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, he said. His voice cracked. I didn't know if I was supposed to. I didn't want to make Mom mad. Ethan, listen to me very carefully. You are 10 years old. None of this is your responsibility. Not the refrigerator. Not the fight between the grown-ups. Not any of it. You did nothing wrong. But I feel like I did. I know. And that's because the adults in your life put you in a position where you had to keep secrets, and that's not fair to you. But I need you to hear me. You are not part of this. You are the best part of my whole life, and nothing, absolutely nothing, will ever change that. He sniffled. Can I still come help you pack? I would love that. Okay. Saturday. Saturday. I hung up the phone and sat on the floor of my half-packed living room and cried. Not soft, quiet tears. The kind that comes from deep inside your chest and feels like it's pulling your ribs apart. The kind that leaves you gasping. My 10-year-old grandson had been carrying guilt about a refrigerator for months. A child. A child who should have been worrying about baseball practice and homework and which video game to play after school. Instead, he'd been watching his mother hide his grandmother's food and wondering whether he should say something. I cried for him. I cried for the innocence he shouldn't have had to lose. And then I stopped crying, wiped my face, and picked up another box. Because grief was one thing, drowning in it was another, and I had made a promise to myself that I was done drowning. Saturday morning, Ethan showed up at 9 o'clock sharp. Andrew dropped him off. He didn't come inside. He waved from the car, and I waved back, and that was enough. We weren't ready for more yet. Not quite. Ethan walked in and looked around at the boxes. Wow, Grandma, you have a lot of stuff. 42 years of stuff. Where do we start? The kitchen. That's the hardest room. We worked together all morning. Ethan wrapped dishes in newspaper. I sorted through drawers full of utensils, most of which I hadn't used in years. We found a whisk shaped like a dinosaur that Andrew had bought me as a joke when he was in college. "Dad bought this," Ethan asked, holding it up. He thought it was hilarious. It kind of is. Your father has always had a strange sense of humor, Ethan grinned, and for a moment everything felt normal, like nothing had changed, like we were just a grandmother and a grandson spending a Saturday together. Then Ethan opened the cabinet above the stove and pulled out a ceramic cookie jar shaped like a rooster. "What's this?" "That was your grandfather's. He bought it at a flea market before you were born. He said every kitchen needed a ridiculous cookie jar." Ethan turned it over in his hands. "Is this going to the new apartment?" "Yes, that one comes with me." "Good." He set it down carefully like it was made of glass. "Grandma." "Yes." "Do you think Grandpa would be mad about what's happening with Mom and Dad and the house and everything?" I stopped what I was doing and looked at my grandson. "Your grandfather wouldn't be mad," I said. "He'd be sad. He'd be sad that things got to this point. But he'd also be proud." "Proud of what?" "Proud that I finally said enough." Ethan thought about this. "Mom says you're being dramatic." I felt my chest tighten, but I kept my voice even. "What do you think?" "I think Mom shouldn't have put your food in the garage." "Well, there you go." We packed in silence for a while after that. Ethan was careful with everything he touched. Methodical. Patient. He reminded me so much of Richard, it made my throat ache. Around noon I ordered pizza. We sat on the kitchen floor because I'd already packed the chairs. We ate pepperoni pizza off paper plates, and Ethan told me about school and his friends, and a girl named Sophie, who he absolutely did not like but couldn't stop talking about. "She sounds great," I said. "She's okay," he said, turning red. I smiled. The first real, unforced smile I'd felt in weeks. At 2 o'clock, Andrew came to pick him up. This time he parked and came to the door. "How'd it go?" he asked Ethan. "Good. We packed the whole kitchen, and Grandma let me keep the dinosaur whisk." Andrew looked at me. "The dinosaur whisk." "He earned it," I said. Andrew's face softened. Just for a second. Just enough for me to see the boy I raised underneath the man who had let me down. "Mom, can we talk for a minute?" "Ethan, go wait in the car, sweetheart." Ethan hugged me. Not a quick hug. The kind where he buried his face in my shoulder and held on like he was afraid I might disappear. "I'll see you soon," I whispered. He pulled away, grabbed the dinosaur whisk, and ran to the car. Andrew watched him go. Then he turned to me. "Lauren's been different this week." "Different how?" "Quiet. She's not talking to me much. She goes to bed early. She hasn't said your name once." "Is that supposed to concern me?" "No, I just thought you should know. I think what you said to her hit harder than she's letting on." "Good." "Mom." "What, Andrew?" "What do you want me to say? That I feel sorry for Lauren because she's having a hard week. She made me feel invisible for years. A hard week is nothing." He nodded. "You're right." "I know I'm right." He shifted his weight. I could tell there was something else. "Say it," I said. "Say what?" "Whatever you're standing there trying not to say, just say it." He took a breath. "Lauren's sister called. Diane. She heard about the situation." "How?" Lauren told her. "And Diane called me directly. She said I should convince you to drop the repayment demand. She said Lauren is embarrassed and that this whole thing is tearing the family apart." I stared at him. "Diane called you?" "Yes." "Lauren's sister, who I have met exactly 3 times in 7 years, called my son to tell him that I should stop asking for my own money back." "Mom, I told her it wasn't her business." "Did you?" "Yes. I told her this was between us." "And what did she say?" "She said I was letting my mother destroy my marriage." The words hit me like cold water. Letting my mother destroy my marriage. I stood very still. "Andrew, I want you to hear what I'm about to say, and I want you to remember it the next time Diane or anyone else calls you." Okay. I did not destroy anything. Lauren's behavior and your silence, that is what brought us here. Not me, not the loan, not the letter. I didn't create this situation. I responded to it. There's a difference. I know. Do you? Because the moment you start believing Diane's version that I'm the problem, that I'm the one causing chaos, that's the moment we lose whatever we're trying to rebuild. I don't believe her version, Mom. Then tell Lauren to stop calling her sister and start taking responsibility. He looked at me. I will. Promise me. I promise. He turned and walked back to the car. Ethan waved at me through the window, holding up the dinosaur whisk like a trophy. I waved back. Then I closed the door and leaned against it. Diane. Lauren had brought in reinforcements. She was building a case, marshaling support, painting herself as the victim and me as the aggressor. I should have been surprised. I wasn't. Because Lauren had always been strategic. Every move she made was calculated. The rehearsed apology, the woman-to-woman visit, the soft voice, the careful tears, and now calling her sister to pressure Andrew from another angle. Lauren wasn't grieving our relationship. She was managing a crisis. The following Tuesday, something unexpected happened. I was at the grocery store, my grocery store, buying food for my own refrigerator. The only refrigerator that mattered when I ran into someone I hadn't seen in over a year. Patricia Calloway. Patricia was Andrew's godmother. She and Richard had been friends since college. After Richard died, Patricia moved to Florida to be near her daughter. We'd stayed in touch through occasional phone calls, but I hadn't seen her face to face since the funeral. Margaret. I turned around in the produce aisle, and there she was. Patricia. What are you doing here? Visiting my nephew for the week. I was going to call you. She pulled me into a hug. The kind of hug that tells you someone actually cares. Not the polite arm's-length hugs Lauren gave me. A real hug. You look different, she said, stepping back and studying my face. I've had an eventful few weeks. I heard. Andrew called me. Of course he did. Andrew was calling everyone. Looking for allies. Looking for someone who could convince his mother to change her mind. What did he tell you? He told me you're selling the house, you hired a lawyer, and you're demanding repayment on a loan. He sounded terrified. Good. Patricia raised an eyebrow. Let's get coffee, she said. We went to the diner on Maple Street, the one Richard and I used to go to on Sunday mornings. I hadn't been there since he died. Walking through the door felt strange, like visiting a place I used to live. We sat in a booth and ordered coffee, and I told Patricia everything. The groceries, the garage, Lauren's words, Andrew's silence, the 4 months he knew, the loan agreement, the house sale, Rebecca, Claire, all of it. Patricia listened the way she always did. Still. Focused. No interruptions. When I finished, she took a long sip of her coffee and set the cup down. Richard would be very proud of you. Andrew says the same thing, but I don't think they mean it the same way. They don't. Andrew means Dad would understand why you're upset, would finally recognize the woman he married. I looked at her. Margaret, I'm going to say something that might be hard to hear. Everyone keeps saying that to me lately. Just say it. Richard worried about you. Toward the end. He called me a few times and he said he was afraid of what would happen to you after he was gone. Not financially, emotionally. He said you had wrapped your entire identity around being needed, and he was afraid that without him, you'd pour yourself into Andrew and Lauren until there was nothing left. I gripped my coffee cup. He said that. Those were his exact words. Margaret doesn't know who she is without someone to take care of. He asked me to watch out for you. You moved to Florida. I know, and I'm sorry for that. But I'm here now, and from what I can see, you figured it out on your own. I didn't figure anything out, I just snapped. Sometimes snapping is the beginning of figuring it out. We sat there for an hour. Patricia told me about Florida, about her daughter, about getting older in a place where everyone around you is also getting older and nobody pretends otherwise. I told her about the apartment I'd rented. Small, quiet, mine. "Are you scared?" she asked. "Terrified." "Good. Comfort is what got you into this mess. A little fear means you're moving." Before we left, Patricia said one more thing. "Margaret, be careful with Lauren." "What do you mean?" "I mean she's not done. Women like Lauren don't lose gracefully. She's going to try to get the upper hand somehow. I've seen it before." "What can she do?" "I don't know, but keep your eyes open." I drove home thinking about Patricia's warning. I told myself she was being dramatic, that Lauren had agreed to the payments, that Andrew was starting to come around, that things were moving in the right direction. I was wrong. 3 days later it happened. I came home from the post office, and there was a car in my driveway that I didn't recognize. A dark blue sedan, out-of-state plates. I parked on the street and walked up to my front door. A woman I had never seen before was standing on my porch. Professional attire. Briefcase. She turned when she heard me approach. "Mrs. Whitmore?" "Yes." "My name is Catherine Hale. I'm an attorney. I represent your daughter-in-law, Lauren Whitmore." I stopped walking. "Excuse me. Lauren has retained my services regarding the loan agreement and the pending repayment demand. May I come in?" I stood on my own walkway, looking at this woman, this stranger standing on my porch with a briefcase full of arguments against me, and I felt something rise inside me that I hadn't felt in a very long time. Rage. Not the quiet, swallowed kind. Not the kind I packed away with a smile and a casserole. The real kind. The kind that starts in your gut and rises up through your chest and into your throat like fire. "No," I said. "You may not come in." Catherine Hale adjusted her glasses. "Mrs. Whitmore, I think it would be beneficial for both parties if we— My attorney is Rebecca Collins. You can contact her. You do not come to my home. You do not show up on my porch unannounced. And you do not speak to me without Rebecca present. Are we clear?" She studied me for a moment. Then she nodded. "I'll be in touch with Ms. Collins." She walked past me, got into the blue sedan, and drove away. I stood on my porch and watched her go. Then I went inside, sat down, and called Rebecca. "Rebecca, Lauren hired a lawyer." Silence on the other end. A woman named Catherine Hale just showed up at my house. "Catherine Hale. You know her." "I know of her. She's aggressive. She specializes in family financial disputes." "What does that mean for us?" "It means Lauren is going to try to challenge the loan agreement. She might argue it was a gift, not a loan. She might argue the statute of limitations. She might argue undue influence." Undue influence. I wrote them a check because my son asked me to. I know Margaret. But Lauren isn't trying to win on the merits. She's trying to make this expensive and exhausting enough that you'll drop it. "She doesn't know me very well." Rebecca paused. "No, she doesn't." "What do we do?" "We prepare. We gather everything. The original agreement. Bank records showing the transfer. Any communication, texts, emails, anything where Andrew or Lauren acknowledge the loan. I have texts. Andrew texted me on Ethan's birthday 2 years ago. He said, 'Mom, thanks for everything, and we haven't forgotten about the money. We'll figure it out soon.' That's gold. Save it. Screenshot it. Send it to me." "I will." "Margaret, one more thing." "What?" "Don't talk to Lauren. Don't talk to her lawyer. Don't talk to Diane or anyone else on Lauren's side. Everything goes through me from this point forward." "Understood." I hung up and sat in the dark. Lauren had hired a lawyer. She wasn't just disagreeing with me anymore. She was fighting me. Formally. Legally. With professionals and briefcases and strategies. The woman who moved my groceries to the garage was now trying to move me to the garage. But she had made a critical mistake. She assumed I was still the old Margaret. The one who folded. The one who swallowed. The one who chose peace over dignity every single time. That Margaret was gone. The next morning, I drove to Rebecca's office with a folder full of evidence. Bank statements. The original loan agreement. Screenshots of Andrew's texts. A printed email from 6 years ago where Lauren had written to Andrew, accidentally copying me, saying, "We need to figure out a payment plan for your mom's loan before she starts asking." Rebecca read that email 3 times. She called it a loan, Rebecca said. In her own words. In her own email. Yes. Margaret, this case is airtight. I know. Catherine Hale is going to realize that very quickly. And then what? Then Lauren will have two choices: pay up or settle. I don't want a settlement. I want what I'm owed. Rebecca nodded. Then that's what we'll get. I drove home feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not anger, not sadness, not even determination. Power. The quiet, steady kind. The kind that comes from knowing you're right and having the evidence to prove it. 4 days later, Andrew called me. Mom, did you know Lauren hired a lawyer? A woman showed up at my front door. She didn't tell me. I found out because Catherine Hale's office called our home phone asking for Lauren. I answered and they said it was regarding the Whitmore financial matter. She didn't tell you? No. Andrew, your wife, hired a lawyer behind your back to fight your mother over money she knows she owes. He was quiet. What do you want to do about this? I asked. I told Lauren it has to stop. And she said I was choosing you over her. Andrew, this is not about choosing sides. This is about right and wrong. You borrowed $87,000. You signed an agreement. You never paid it back. These are facts. There are no sides. I know. So tell your wife to fire Catherine Hale, stick with the $1,500 a month, and let's move on. She won't listen to me, Mom. That's not my problem, Andrew. That's yours. I hung up. And I want to tell you something honest, because I promised myself that if I was going to tell this story, I would tell all of it. Not just the parts that make me look strong. That night after I hung up on Andrew, I sat on my bathroom floor and cried. Not because I was afraid of Catherine Hale. Not because I doubted Rebecca. Not because I thought I might lose. I cried because my son said his wife wouldn't listen to him. And I realized that Andrew was just as lost as I had been. He had spent so many years avoiding conflict with Lauren that he had given away his own voice. The same way I had given away mine. He couldn't stand up to her because he'd never practiced. He'd never built that muscle. He'd watched his father handle things with quiet strength and assumed that silence was the same as strength. It isn't. Silence is what happens when you're too afraid to speak. Strength is what happens when you speak anyway. My son didn't know the difference, and I couldn't teach him by going back to being the woman who said nothing. The next week was a blur. Rebecca filed a formal response to Catherine Hale. The response included the loan agreement, the bank records, Andrew's texts, and Lauren's own email referring to the money as a loan. Catherine Hale's office went quiet for 3 days. Then Rebecca called me. Margaret, Catherine Hale wants to meet. A mediation session. Both parties. Both attorneys. She wants to discuss a resolution. What kind of resolution? She didn't say. But the fact that she's asking for mediation instead of filing a counterclaim tells me she's seen the evidence and she knows Lauren's position is weak. When? Next Thursday. I'll be there. Margaret, mediation can be emotional. Lauren will be in the room. She might say things designed to provoke you. Rebecca, I spent 7 years watching my food get moved to a garage. I think I can handle a conference room. Thursday came. I woke up early. I dressed carefully. Not for Lauren. Not for Catherine Hale. For myself. I wore the blue blazer Richard bought me for our 40th anniversary. He said I looked like a senator in it. I told him I didn't want to look like a senator. He said too bad. I drove to Rebecca's office and we went to the mediation together. The conference room was at Catherine Hale's firm. When I walked in, Lauren was already seated at the table. Catherine Hale sat next to her. Both of them looked at me. Lauren's face was unreadable. Whatever she was feeling, she had locked it behind a mask I couldn't penetrate. Andrew was not there. I noticed immediately. "Where's Andrew?" I asked. Catherine Hale spoke first. "This mediation is between the relevant financial parties, Lauren and Margaret. Andrew signed the agreement," Rebecca said. "He's a relevant party. Mr. Whitmore has agreed to abide by whatever resolution is reached here today," Catherine said. I looked at Lauren. "You told Andrew not to come." Lauren didn't flinch. "Andrew and I discussed it. He agreed this was better handled between us." "Between us and our lawyers," I corrected. "Yes." I sat down. Rebecca opened her folder. Catherine opened hers. The mediator, a man named Gerald Silverhaired. Calm. The kind of person you hire specifically because nothing rattles him. Began by explaining the process. I didn't listen to the process. I watched Lauren. She sat perfectly still, hands folded, back straight. She was performing composure the way you perform it when you know you're losing, but refuse to show it. Catherine Hale spoke first. My client acknowledges the existence of the loan agreement. However, we believe the terms have been functionally modified over the past 7 years through the absence of any repayment demand. Mrs. Whitmore Sr. never requested payment. She never raised the issue. She never sent a statement. Our position is that her silence constituted an informal forgiveness of the debt. Rebecca didn't blink. Silence is not forgiveness, Rebecca said. The agreement has no expiration clause. No clause states that failure to demand payment constitutes forgiveness. The statute of limitations in this state for written contracts is 6 years from the last acknowledgement of the debt. We have a text message from Andrew Whitmore from 2 years ago explicitly acknowledging the loan. We also have an email from Lauren Whitmore herself referring to the funds as a loan. The debt is valid. The agreement is enforceable. Catherine Hale's jaw tightened. Just slightly. Gerald turned to Lauren. Mrs. Whitmore, would you like to say anything? Lauren looked at me. Margaret, when you gave us that money, you said you were helping family. You said it was what mothers do. You never once made us feel like it was hanging over our heads. That's because I trusted you, I said. I trusted that you would honor your word without being reminded. But you never asked. I shouldn't have had to ask Lauren. That's the whole point. A person with integrity doesn't wait to be chased. They pay what they owe. Lauren's composure flickered. This isn't about integrity, she said. This is about control. You've always tried to control Andrew. The money, the groceries, showing up whenever you want, rearranging my kitchen. You used generosity as a leash. I felt Rebecca's hand on my arm. A gentle touch. A warning. Don't react. But I was done not reacting. Lauren. I said, I rearranged your spice rack once, and you've held it against me for 3 years. I brought groceries to your home because my son told me his family was struggling. I showed up because I was invited. And I gave you $87,000 because you asked. Andrew asked. You coached him. I heard you in the background. Just ask her. Those were your words. Lauren's face went white, because she didn't know I'd heard that. 7 years ago on that phone call, she thought she'd been whispering. She thought she was invisible behind Andrew's voice, but I heard her. The same way I heard her in the kitchen talking about the garage. I have excellent hearing, Lauren, I said. Always have. Gerald cleared his throat. Let's refocus on the resolution. Both parties acknowledge the existence of the loan. The question is repayment terms. Rebecca pulled out the proposed agreement. $1,500 per month. First payment already received and documented. Remaining balance to be paid on a fixed schedule with no interest. Catherine Hale reviewed the document. My client would like to propose a reduced amount, $800 per month. No, I said. Rebecca looked at me. Catherine looked at me. Gerald looked at me. The agreement stands at $1,500. That's already generous. If Lauren can afford Hawaii and a country club membership, she can afford to repay her mother-in-law. Lauren's eyes narrowed. You're punishing me. I'm billing you, I said. There's a difference. Gerald looked at both lawyers. I think we have a path forward. $1,500 per month documented through Ms. Collins' office. Can both parties agree? Catherine Hale looked at Lauren. Lauren stared at me across the table. And then she said something that almost knocked me out of my chair. Fine, but I want something in return. This isn't a negotiation for favors, Lauren, Rebecca said. I want Margaret to stop coming to our house. The room went still. I felt my heartbeat in my ears. I want boundaries, Lauren continued. No more showing up unannounced. No more rearranging things. No more groceries. If she wants to see Ethan, she can arrange it through Andrew. She wasn't asking for boundaries. She was asking to erase me. I looked at her across that table. I looked at this woman who had eaten my meals, spent my money, lived in a house, My check helped build, and I understood something with perfect, searing clarity. Lauren wasn't afraid of me. She was afraid of what I represented. I was the reminder that she hadn't earned what she had. Every time I walked through her door carrying bags of food and love, I reminded her that the kitchen she cooked in the bathroom, she showered in the deck, she entertained on those existed because of me. And she couldn't stand it. Hiding my food in the garage wasn't about refrigerator space. It was about making the reminder disappear. I stood up. Lauren, you don't get to dictate when I see my grandson. That is not on the table. It will never be on the table. Margaret. But I'll tell you what I will do. I will call before I visit. I will respect your space. And I will never again bring groceries to a home where they're not welcome. I paused. Not because you're asking. Because I'm done giving to people who hide what I offer. Gerald looked at both sides. Do we have an agreement? Rebecca looked at me. I nodded. Catherine looked at Lauren. Lauren nodded. Then let's put it in writing, Gerald said. We signed the mediation agreement 30 minutes later. $1,500 a month. Phone calls before visits. No restrictions on my relationship with Ethan. As we left, Lauren stopped me in the hallway. Margaret. I turned. I didn't want it to be like this. I looked at her. Then why did you hide my food, Lauren? Why didn't you just talk to me? She didn't answer. That's the part I'll never understand, I said. If you needed space, you could have said so. If you felt overwhelmed, you could have told me. I'm not unreasonable. I'm not vindictive. I'm a 71-year-old woman who just wanted to feel like she mattered to the people she loved. And instead of a conversation, you gave me a garage refrigerator. Lauren's eyes glistened. I'm sorry, she said. This time it sounded different. Not rehearsed. Not strategic. Not calculating. It sounded tired. Like the apology of a woman who had finally run out of angles and was left with nothing but the truth. I hear you, I said. I didn't say I forgive you. Not yet. Because forgiveness isn't something you hand out at a law firm. It's something that grows slowly in the quiet spaces between hurt and healing, and I wasn't there yet. I walked out of that building and into the parking lot. Rebecca walked beside me. You did well in there, Margaret. I don't feel like I did well. I feel like I just survived a war. That's because you did. I drove home. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for 10 minutes. The sold sign was in the front yard. The closing was in 9 days. 9 days, and this house would belong to Jeremy and Sarah and their baby girl. I looked at the front door. The same door. Andrew knocked on when he demanded answers. The same door Lauren walked through when she came to negotiate. The same door I had opened 10,000 times over 42 years. In 9 days, I would close it for the last time. And somewhere on the other side of that closing, there was a small apartment with 1 bedroom and a balcony and a refrigerator that belonged entirely to me. I got out of the car and walked inside. The house was almost empty now. Most of the furniture was packed or sold. The walls were bare. The rooms echoed. I walked to the kitchen. I opened the cabinet above the stove. The Rooster cookie jar was still there. Ethan and I had decided it would be the last thing packed, the very last thing to leave this house. I touched it. Almost time, I whispered. Then I closed the cabinet and walked to Richard's chair. The movers were coming for it tomorrow. I had decided to keep it. Not because it matched the apartment. It didn't. But because some things matter more than matching. I sat down one more time. I closed my eyes. And I let the house hold me. One last time. Not as a prisoner. As a guest. A guest who was finally willingly, gratefully checking out. The movers came on a Tuesday at 7 in the morning. 2 men. Young. Strong. They didn't know the history of anything they were carrying. To them, it was furniture. Boxes. Weight. To me, it was 42 years compressed into a truck. I stood in the empty living room and watched them carry out Richard's recliner. They tilted it sideways to fit through the doorframe, and I almost told them to be careful to treat it gently, to understand that the man who sat in that chair every evening for 30 years was the best person I had ever known. But I didn't, because they were doing their job, and my grief was not their burden. By 10 o'clock the house was empty. Not a piece of furniture, not a picture on the wall, not a dish in the cabinet, just bare floors, bare walls, and the echo of my footsteps. I walked through every room one final time. The kitchen where I had cooked 10,000 meals. The bedroom where Richard had held me on the night my mother died and whispered, "I'm here, Margaret. I'm not going anywhere." Andrew's old room where I used to sit on the edge of his bed reading him stories until he fell asleep, and then sit a little longer because I wasn't ready to leave. The bathroom where I had looked at myself in the mirror 4 years ago on the morning of Richard's funeral and said out loud, "You can do this." I had done it. Not gracefully, not perfectly, but I had done it. I walked to the kitchen one last time and opened the cabinet above the stove. The Rooster cookie jar was still there, the very last thing. I lifted it carefully and held it against my chest. "Okay, Richard," I said. "Let's go." I walked out the front door and pulled it shut behind me. I didn't lock it. The new owners would have their own keys, their own locks, their own life. I placed the cookie jar on the passenger seat of my car, buckled the seatbelt around it like it was a child, and pulled out of the driveway. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. Not because I was being brave, because I was afraid that if I looked back, I wouldn't be able to leave. The apartment was small. 1 bedroom, a galley kitchen, a bathroom with a shower that made a sound like someone stepping on a cat when you turned on the hot water. A balcony just big enough for 1 chair and a pot of flowers. The movers unloaded everything in 3 hours. I directed traffic. This goes here, that goes there. Richard's chair in the corner by the window, the cookie jar on the kitchen counter. By 2 o'clock the movers were gone, and I was alone. I sat in Richard's chair and looked around. The apartment was half the size of my old living room. The ceilings were lower. The walls were thinner. I could hear my neighbor's television through the wall. Someone upstairs was vacuuming. It was nothing like my house. It was perfect, because every square inch of it was mine. Not a museum to a life that had ended. Not a shrine to a marriage that death had stolen. Not a backdrop for a family that had slowly pushed me to the margins. Mine. I ate dinner alone that night. Soup from a can. I didn't feel like cooking. I sat at my tiny kitchen table new from a furniture store, no history attached, and I ate my soup and I thought about nothing. Nothing. For the first time in years, my mind was quiet. No worry about Andrew. No anger at Lauren. No grief for Richard. No calculations about who needed what from me and when. Just soup. And silence. And the strange, unfamiliar feeling of not being needed by anyone. It should have felt lonely. It felt like oxygen. The first week in the apartment was disorienting. I kept reaching for light switches that weren't where they used to be. I opened the wrong cabinet looking for coffee mugs. I woke up at 3 in the morning confused about where I was, my hand reaching across the bed for Richard before I remembered. But each day, the apartment felt a little more like mine, and a little less like a stranger's. On Friday, Dorothy came to visit. She brought a plant. Something green and leafy that she swore was impossible to kill. "I've killed every plant I've ever owned," I told her. "This one's different. It thrives on neglect. You two are perfect for each other." I laughed. I put the plant on the balcony. Dorothy walked through the apartment and nodded approvingly. "It's small. It's enough. Richard's chair looks ridiculous in here." "I know. I don't care." She sat down on the couch and looked at me. "How are you, Margaret, really?" "I don't know yet. Ask me in a month." "Fair enough." She stayed for an hour. We drank tea. We talked about nothing important. She told me about her son's divorce, her dog's surgery, a book she was reading about a woman who sailed around the world alone at 65. "Maybe that's your next move," she said. "Dorothy, I get seasick in the bathtub." She laughed. I laughed. And it felt like the first normal moment I'd had in weeks. After Dorothy left, I sat on the balcony with my impossible-to-kill plant and watched the sun go down. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Grandma, when can I come see your new place?" Anytime, sweetheart. This weekend. Saturday. Saturday. I put the phone down and smiled. Saturday. Ethan was coming on Saturday. I had 2 days to make the apartment feel like somewhere a 10-year-old boy would want to be. I went to the store the next morning. I bought poster board for the wall, bright colors the kind kids like. I bought snacks. I bought a deck of cards and a board game. I bought cookie ingredients because I had promised him cookies, and Margaret Whitmore does not break promises. On Saturday morning, I baked chocolate chip cookies. The same recipe I'd been making for 40 years, the apartment filled with a smell that instantly made it feel like home. Ethan arrived at 10. Andrew dropped him off again. This time, Andrew came inside. He stood in the doorway of my apartment and looked around. I watched his face. I was looking for judgment, for pity, for the quiet devastation of a son seeing his mother in a one-bedroom apartment after living in a 4-bedroom house for 4 decades. Instead, I saw something else. Relief. "It's nice, Mom." "You don't have to say that." "I mean it. It feels like you in here." That hit me harder than I expected. Because he was right. The house had stopped feeling like years ago. It had become a monument to who I used to be. This apartment, small, imperfect, slightly chaotic, felt like who I was becoming. Ethan pushed past his father and went straight to the kitchen. "Are those cookies?" "What do you think?" He grabbed 2 before I could even get a plate. "Ethan manners," Andrew said. "It's fine," I said. "This kitchen has no rules." Ethan grinned at me with chocolate on his teeth. I grinned back. Andrew stayed for a few minutes. He walked around the apartment. He touched Richard's chair. He paused at the cookie jar on the counter. "You kept this." "Of course I kept it." He opened it. Empty. "I haven't filled it yet," I said. I was waiting for the right moment. He closed it gently. "Mom, I want to tell you something." "Okay." "I talked to Lauren this week. Really talked. For the first time in a long time. About us. About you. About what happened and why. About the kind of marriage we want and the kind of family we want to be." I waited. "She's going to fire Catherine Hale." I blinked. "She is." "She already did. Yesterday. She called me from the car after leaving Catherine's office and said she was done fighting you. She said she's tired of being the villain." I didn't know what to say. "Mom, I know you don't trust her. I know you think everything she does is strategic. And honestly, for a long time it was. But something shifted this week. I don't know what. Maybe the mediation. Maybe seeing you in this apartment instead of the house. Maybe just exhaustion. But she told me something she's never said before." "What?" Andrew looked at the floor. "She said she was jealous of you." "Jealous of me." "She said that every time you walked into our house with food and love and energy, it reminded her that she couldn't do what you do. She said her own mother never cooked a meal for her growing up. Never showed up with groceries. Never babysat. Never helped with a single bill. And watching you do all of that for Andrew for us, it made her feel like she was failing. Like no matter how hard she tried, she could never be the kind of mother or wife that you were." I stared at my son. "So she hid my food in the garage because she felt inadequate." "She hid your food because seeing it in her kitchen reminded her of everything her own mother never gave her. It wasn't rational, Mom. It wasn't kind. But it was real." I sat down. I sat down because my legs felt like they might not hold me. For weeks I had constructed a version of Lauren in my mind. A villain. A schemer. A cold, calculating woman who resented me and wanted me gone. And that version was partly true. Lauren had been unkind. She had been dismissive. She had treated me like an inconvenience. But underneath all of that was something I never considered. Pain. Lauren's own pain. A woman who grew up without a mother who showed up. A woman who married into a family where the mother showed up constantly, overwhelmingly, relentlessly. A woman who couldn't handle the comparison because the comparison made her feel like she would never measure up. It didn't excuse what she did, but it explained it. And the explanation cracked something open inside me that I thought had permanently sealed shut. Andrew, why didn't she ever tell me this? Because she was ashamed. Because admitting she was jealous of her 71-year-old mother-in-law felt pathetic. Her words, not mine. It's not pathetic, it's human. I know, I told her that. I sat with this for a long time. Ethan was in the living room, oblivious, playing with the board game I'd bought. I could hear him talking to himself, making up rules as he went. Andrew, I'm not going to pretend this changes everything overnight. I'm not asking you to, but I'm willing to try. Not for Lauren's sake, not even for yours, for Ethan's. That boy has been carrying weight that doesn't belong to him, and the only way to take it off his shoulders is for the adults in his life to stop fighting. I agree. But the payments continue. Of course. And if Lauren ever makes me feel like I don't belong again, I'm not going to swallow it. I'm going to say something, directly, to her face. I wouldn't expect anything less. Good. Andrew walked over and hugged me. Not the stiff, obligatory hug he'd been giving me for the past few years. A real hug. The kind he used to give me when he was young, before Lauren, before money, before the slow erosion of everything simple between us. I love you, Mom. I love you too. Now go home. I have cookies to make, and a grandson to spoil. He left. I turned to Ethan, who was building something out of the board game pieces that had nothing to do with the actual game. Grandma, this game is boring. Can we make up our own rules? Sweetheart, that's exactly what we're going to do. We spent the rest of the afternoon inventing a game that made no sense and followed no logic, and involved throwing dice at the cookie jar for bonus points. Ethan laughed until he had tears running down his face. I laughed until my stomach hurt. At 4 o'clock, Andrew came back to pick him up. Ethan packed up his things. He grabbed 4 cookies for the road. He hugged me at the door. Then he stopped. Grandma. Yes. I like this apartment. You do? Yeah. It smells like cookies. And you seem happy. I knelt down and looked him in the eye. I am happy, sweetheart. Because you left the house. Because I found something I lost. What? Me. He thought about that for a second. Then he hugged me again and ran to the car. I closed the door and leaned against it. I stood there for a long time. Not because I was sad, not because I was overwhelmed, because I wanted to memorize that feeling. The feeling of my grandson telling me I seemed happy. The feeling of Andrew hugging me like he meant it. The feeling of standing in a tiny apartment that smelled like chocolate chip cookies and felt more like home than any 4-bedroom house ever could. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in 4 years. I wrote a letter to Richard. Not a letter I would send, obviously, but a letter I needed to write. Dear Richard, I sold the house. I know you'd understand. I moved into a place that's smaller than your old workshop, and the shower sounds like a dying animal, and the walls are so thin I can hear my neighbor arguing with his wife about whose turn it is to take out the trash. But it's mine, every inch of it. You told me not to let anyone make me small. I let them, for a while. But I stopped. And I stood up, and I sold the house, and I hired a lawyer, and I packed 42 years into cardboard boxes, and I started over at 71. You would have laughed at the rooster cookie jar on my kitchen counter. It's sitting right there like it owns the place. Just like you would have. I miss you every day. But I've stopped waiting for the missing to kill me. It won't. I'm tougher than I thought. Lauren told Andrew she was jealous of me. Can you believe that all those years I thought she hated me and she was jealous? You probably knew that already. You always saw things I couldn't. Andrew is trying. He's really trying. He hugged me today like he used to when he was small. I forgot what that felt like. Ethan is the best thing in my life. He's so much like you it makes my chest ache. Patient, kind, careful with other people's feelings. He told me he likes my apartment. He said I seem happy. I am Richard. For the first time in 4 years, I think I am. Your chair is in the corner by the window. It looks ridiculous in here. I love it. I love you. Always. Margaret. I folded the letter and put it in the drawer of my nightstand. Then I brushed my teeth, washed my face, and got into bed. I pulled the covers up to my chin. I closed my eyes. And for the first time since I slammed that for sale sign into the ground, I slept without dreaming about the house. I dreamed about the ocean, wide and open and going on forever. And I was standing at the edge of it barefoot with the water touching my toes. Not drowning, not swimming, just standing, feeling the ground beneath my feet, knowing it was solid, knowing it was mine. 3 months passed. 3 months of learning how to live inside a life that was entirely my own. I won't pretend it was easy. The first few weeks in the apartment felt like wearing shoes that didn't quite fit. Everything was slightly off. The kitchen was too small for the way I cooked. The bedroom closet held a third of what my old closet held, which meant I had to make decisions about clothes I'd been keeping for decades for no reason other than habit. The bathroom faucet dripped at night, a steady tick-tick-tick, that reminded me I was alone in a way the big house never did, because the big house had enough space to hide loneliness in. But slowly, something shifted. I stopped comparing the apartment to the house. I stopped measuring my new life against my old one. And I started doing something I hadn't done in years. I started living for myself. It began with small things. I joined the community center 3 blocks from my apartment. Not because anyone told me to. Not because I was trying to fill time. Because I walked past it one morning and saw a flyer in the window that said, "Watercolor for Beginners Tuesdays at 10 a.m." And I thought, why not? I had never painted in my life. Richard would have laughed. He used to say I had the artistic ability of a hammer. But Richard wasn't there to laugh, and I was tired of letting the ghost of who I used to be dictate who I could become. So I walked in. The class had 12 people. Most of them were around my age. A few were younger. The instructor was a woman named Grace, who spoke so softly you had to lean forward to hear her, which meant the room was always perfectly still. On my first day, I painted something that looked like a bruise. "That's beautiful," Grace said, leaning over my shoulder. "It looks like something went wrong," I said. "Art isn't about getting it right, it's about getting it out." I looked at my bruise painting and realized she might be onto something. By the 3rd week, I had made friends. Real friends. Not the kind of friends you make because your husbands work together, or your children go to the same school. Friends who knew nothing about Andrew, nothing about Lauren, nothing about the house or the garage or the $87,000. They knew Margaret, just Margaret, the woman who showed up on Tuesdays with a terrible sense of color and an excellent sense of humor. There was Helen, a retired nurse with a laugh that could shatter glass. There was Bernard, a 78-year-old widower who painted nothing but birds and claimed each one was a portrait of his late wife. And there was June, a 69-year-old woman who had divorced her husband of 40 years after she caught him lying about something so absurd I can't even repeat it without laughing. June became my closest friend. We started having coffee after class, then lunch, then dinner on Thursday nights, then Sunday morning walks in the park. One afternoon, sitting in the coffee shop on the corner, June looked at me and said, "Margaret, you're different than when you first showed up." "Different how?" "You were clenched, like a fist. Everything about you was tight, your shoulders, your jaw, the way you held your paintbrush like it owed you money. And now you're open, still a terrible painter, but open." I threw a sugar packet at her. She caught it and grinned. "I'm serious," she said. "Whatever happened to you before you walked into that class, whatever broke you open, it was the best thing that could have happened." A woman hid my groceries in a garage. June stared at me. "I'm sorry, what?" I told her the whole story. All of it. From the beginning. The phone call from Andrew. The groceries. Lauren's words. The garage refrigerator. The loan. The lawyer. The house sale. The mediation. The apartment. Everything. June listened without interrupting. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and whistled. "Margaret Whitmore, you are the most interesting person I have ever met. I'm a 71-year-old woman who sold her house because her daughter-in-law hurt her feelings. No, you're a 71-year-old woman who sold her house because she finally decided she deserved better. There's a massive difference." I thought about that for a long time after. Deserved better. For most of my life, I didn't think in terms of what I deserved. I thought in terms of what other people needed. What Richard needed. What Andrew needed. What the family needed. Deserving was selfish. Deserving was indulgent. Good mothers didn't deserve. Good mothers gave. But June was right. I did deserve better. And the fact that I had to lose a house, hire a lawyer, survive a mediation, and move into a one-bedroom apartment to figure that out. Well, some lessons take the scenic route. The payments kept coming. $1,500 a month, like clockwork. Rebecca reported that Catherine Hale had been formally dismissed and that the repayment was being handled directly between Lauren and Rebecca's office. I didn't call to thank Lauren for paying on time. I didn't call to check in. I let the money come, and I let the silence speak. But the silence didn't last. 4 months after I moved into the apartment, something happened that I did not expect. It was a Sunday. I was sitting on my balcony reading a book June had given me about a woman who hiked the Pacific Crest Trail alone at 52. My phone rang. Lauren. I almost didn't answer, but something in my gut told me to pick up. Margaret. Lauren. Can I come see you? I paused. Is everything okay? Yes. No. I don't know. I just need to talk to you. Not through Andrew. Not through lawyers. Just us. I thought about Patricia's warning. Be careful with Lauren. Women like Lauren don't lose gracefully. But something in Lauren's voice was different. Not rehearsed. Not controlled. Raw. The kind of raw that you can't fake because faking it requires energy that the truly exhausted don't have. Come over at 2, I said. She arrived at 2. She knocked softly. I opened the door. Lauren looked different. Not physically. Something else. The armor was gone. The careful posture, the calculated expression, the perfectly assembled presentation of a woman who was always performing competence and control. All of it had been stripped away. She stood in my doorway, looking like a woman who had finally stopped pretending. Come in, I said. She walked in. She looked at the apartment. She looked at Richard's chair. She looked at the rooster cookie jar. I like your place, she said. Thank you. We sat at the kitchen table. I made tea because I didn't know what else to do. I placed 2 cups between us like a bridge. Lauren wrapped her hands around her cup, but didn't drink. Margaret, I want to tell you something I've never told anyone. Not Andrew, not my sister, not my therapist. You're seeing a therapist. I started last month. That surprised me. Lauren had always treated therapy the way some people treat dentists, something other people needed. I'm glad, I said, and I meant it. She nodded. My therapist asked me a question 3 weeks ago that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. She asked me who I was trying to punish when I hid your food in the garage. I went still. I told her I wasn't punishing anyone. I told her it was about space, about boundaries, about feeling overwhelmed by a mother-in-law who was always there. And she said, Lauren, you didn't hide the food because Margaret was always there. You hid the food because your mother never was. Lauren's voice cracked on the word mother. And I watched something happen that I had never seen from Lauren in 7 years. She broke. Not the polished, controlled tears she used when she wanted sympathy. The kind of breaking that starts in the chest and rips through you before you can stop it. The kind that makes your face twist and your hands shake and your whole body convulse with something that has been buried so deep for so long that when it finally surfaces, it feels like it might kill you. Lauren put her face in her hands and sobbed. I sat across from her, and I did not move. Not because I was being cold. Because I understood that this moment was not about me. It was about Lauren and a wound I never knew existed. After a long time, she lifted her head. Her eyes were swollen. Her mascara was streaked. She looked nothing like the woman who had sat across from me in that mediation room with her perfect posture and her hired attorney. She looked human. My mother left when I was 11, Lauren said. Not left like died. Left like packed a suitcase and moved to Portland with a man she met at work. She called me twice after that. Twice. In 27 years. I felt my heart clench. I never told Andrew the full story. He knows she's not around, but he doesn't know the details. He doesn't know that I waited by the window every day after school for 3 years, hoping she'd come back. He doesn't know that I stopped eating for 2 months because I thought if I got sick enough, she'd have to come home. Lauren wiped her face with the back of her hand. And then I married Andrew. And I got you. She looked at me. A mother-in-law who showed up every week, who cooked meals, who brought groceries, who rearranged my spice rack and reorganized my pantry and filled every space with her presence. Lauren. And I hated it. Not because you did anything wrong, because every time you walked through my door I thought of her. I thought of my mother. I thought of everything she never did. And instead of feeling grateful that I had you, I felt furious that I needed you. Because needing you meant admitting that there was a hole in me that I couldn't fill on my own. She pressed her palms flat on the table. So I pushed you away. I moved your food. I stopped inviting you to things. I made you feel unwelcome because if you left on your own, I wouldn't have to face the fact that I was the one driving you out. I could pretend it was your fault, that you were overbearing, that you were too much. When the truth was that I was too broken to accept what you were offering. I sat there, and I looked at this woman who I had spent months resenting, months building a case against in my mind, months casting as the villain of my story. And I realized she had her own story. A story where the villain was a woman who packed a suitcase when Lauren was 11 years old and never looked back. Everything Lauren did to me, the garage, the exclusion, the cold greetings, the doorway, conversations, all of it. It was never about me. It was about a mother who left, and a daughter who never healed. Lauren, I said quietly, I wish you had told me this 7 years ago. I couldn't even say it out loud until 3 weeks ago. My therapist had to pull it out of me word by word. Does Andrew know you're here? No. You should tell him, all of it, everything you just told me. I'm scared. Of what? That he'll look at me differently. I reached across the table and did something I never thought I would do. I took Lauren's hand. She flinched. Not away from me. Toward me. Like a person who had been starved for touch and didn't know how to receive it. Lauren, Andrew will not look at you differently. He will look at you more clearly, and that's not the same thing. She squeezed my hand. I'm sorry, Margaret. I'm so sorry for what I did to you. Not the strategic sorry, not the mediation sorry. I'm sorry because you deserved a daughter-in-law who appreciated you, and instead you got one who was too damaged to recognize what she had. I let her words sit in the air. And then I said something that surprised even me. I forgive you. Not because she earned it. Not because her pain excused her behavior. Not because the therapist unlocked some magic explanation that made everything okay. I forgave her because holding on to resentment was like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to get sick. Richard used to say that. I never believed him until now. But Lauren, forgiveness is not a reset button. I'm not going to pretend the last 7 years didn't happen. I'm not going to go back to showing up at your house with bags of groceries and a smile. That version of me is gone. I know. What I am willing to do is start over. Not from scratch. From here. From this table. From the truth. I'd like that. But it goes both ways. If something bothers you, tell me. Don't move it to the garage. Don't whisper it to your friends. Don't call your sister. Tell me. To my face. And I'll do the same. Okay. And the payments continue. She let out a small, watery laugh. The payments continue, she said. We sat at that table for another hour. We talked about things we had never talked about. Her childhood. My childhood. Richard. Her mother. Andrew as a boy. Ethan. The things we wanted for him. The things we were afraid of. It wasn't easy. There were moments of tension. Moments where old instincts kicked in, and I felt the urge to protect myself, to pull back, to remember who this woman was and what she had done. But I pushed through those moments because the woman sitting across from me wasn't the same woman who had hidden my groceries. She was the woman underneath. And the woman underneath was someone I could work with. When Lauren left, she hugged me at the door. Not the polite arm's-length hug. A real one. Thank you for listening, she whispered. Thank you for finally talking, I said. She walked to her car. She got in. She sat there for a minute before starting the engine. I watched from the window. I could see her wiping her eyes. Then she drove away. I closed the door and stood in my apartment. The tea was cold. The tissue box was half empty. The room still felt heavy with everything that had been said. But underneath the heaviness, something else. Light. Not the blinding kind. The soft kind. The kind that comes through a window at dawn when you're not quite awake, but you know the night is over. 2 weeks later was Thanksgiving. For the first time in 35 years, I was not hosting. I had made peace with that. I had planned to spend the day with Dorothy and June. We were going to cook a small meal at June's house and watch old movies and eat pie until we couldn't move. Then Andrew called. "Mom, I want to ask you something, and I want you to think about it before you answer." "Okay." "Lauren and I want you to come to Thanksgiving." I was quiet. "Not as a guest, not as a visitor, as family." "Andrew?" I know what happened last time you were in that house. I know what you heard. I know what it felt like. But things are different now. Lauren is different. I'm different." "Are you?" "Yes. And I can prove it if you give me the chance." I thought about it. I thought about the garage refrigerator, the doorway conversations, the years of feeling invisible, the legal letters and the mediation and the hired attorney. And then I thought about Lauren sitting at my kitchen table with mascara running down her face, telling me about a mother who left when she was 11. "What time?" I said. 2 o'clock. "I'll be there." Thanksgiving morning. I woke up early. I baked a sweet potato casserole. Richard's mother's recipe handed down 3 generations. I made a pecan pie. And I baked a batch of chocolate chip cookies for Ethan. I loaded everything into my car. I drove across town. I pulled into Andrew's driveway. I sat in the car for 5 minutes. I looked at the house. The house I helped pay for. The house where my food had been hidden. The house where I had stood in a garage and placed my love into a refrigerator that was meant to keep me at a distance. I picked up the casserole and the pie and the cookies. I walked to the front door. Before I could knock, the door opened. Lauren. She stood in the doorway. The same doorway where she had once blocked me from entering. The same doorway where she had taken the poster board and started to close the door before I could see my own grandson. But this time she stepped back. She opened the door wide. "Come in, Margaret." I walked in. The kitchen smelled like turkey and rosemary and fresh bread. Ethan was at the counter sneaking cranberry sauce with a spoon. Andrew was at the stove doing something catastrophic to the gravy. "Mom, thank God you're here. This gravy is a disaster." "Move," I said. He moved. I took over the gravy. Because some things don't change, and some things shouldn't. Ethan ran over and hugged me. "Grandma, I put a place setting for you at the table, right next to mine." "Thank you, sweetheart." "And I put your casserole dish in the kitchen fridge, the big one. Mom said it goes there." I looked at Lauren. She was standing by the counter watching. Her eyes were red. Not from crying. From the effort of not crying. She nodded at me. Just a small nod. But it carried the weight of everything we had said at my kitchen table. Every confession. Every apology. Every promise to do better. I nodded back. We sat down to dinner at 3 o'clock. Andrew, Lauren, Ethan, and me. The table was set with the good dishes. There were candles. There was wine. Andrew raised his glass. "I want to say something before we eat." "Dad, I'm starving." Ethan groaned. 30 seconds, buddy." Ethan slumped dramatically. Andrew looked at me. "Mom, this year was the hardest year of my life, and most of it was my fault. I let you down. I stayed silent when I should have spoken up. I let someone I love make someone else I love feel invisible, and I will carry that for the rest of my life." His voice wavered. "But I'm grateful. I am grateful you fought back. I'm grateful you didn't just accept it. Because if you had, I would have kept being the kind of son, the kind of man that I don't want to be. You taught me something this year, Mom." "What's that?" "That love without respect isn't love. It's just habit." I felt tears burn behind my eyes. "And I'm grateful you're here, at this table, in this house, where you belong." He raised his glass higher. "To Mom." Lauren raised her glass. "To Margaret." Ethan raised his glass of apple juice. "To Grandma." "To Richard," I said quietly. Who knew all of this before any of us did? We clinked glasses. We ate. The turkey was perfect. Andrew's gravy was salvageable. My casserole disappeared in 15 minutes. Ethan ate 4 cookies before dinner was over and asked for a fifth. "Absolutely not," Lauren said. "Grandma?" I looked at Lauren. She looked at me. And then Lauren smiled. A real smile. Not a performance. Not a concession. "Fine," Lauren said. "One more, but that's it." Ethan grabbed the cookie before she could change her mind. After dinner, we sat in the living room. Ethan fell asleep on the couch with chocolate on his face. Andrew and Lauren cleaned the kitchen together. I could hear them talking quietly. Not arguing. Talking. I sat in the living room with my sleeping grandson, and I felt something I hadn't felt in that house in years. Welcome. Not tolerated. Not managed. Not accommodated. Welcome. At 8 o'clock I gathered my shoes and put on my coat. Lauren walked me to the door. "Thank you for coming, Margaret." "Thank you for opening the door." She understood what I meant. Both versions of it. "Will you come for Christmas?" I looked at her. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." "Then yes." I walked to my car. I loaded the empty dishes into the back seat. I sat behind the wheel. And I did something I had refused to do on the day I moved out of my house. I looked in the rearview mirror. I saw the front door, still open. Lauren standing in the light. She waved. I waved back. Then I drove home. To my apartment. To my 1-bedroom and my balcony and my dripping faucet and my ridiculous recliner and my rooster cookie jar. I walked inside. I put my keys on the counter. I stood in the middle of my apartment. And I understood something so clearly, it felt like a bell ringing inside my chest. My daughter-in-law hid my groceries in a garage, and that one act, that small, mean, careless act, set off a chain of events that burned down everything I thought I knew about my family, my son, myself. I lost a house. I lost money. I lost time. I lost the comfortable lie that everything was fine. But I found something worth more than all of it. I found out that I was not the woman who could be put in a garage. I was the woman who could sell the whole house. I was the woman who could hire a lawyer, face a mediation, survive a betrayal, forgive a daughter-in-law, rebuild a relationship with her son, and start over at 71 in a 1-bedroom apartment with a dripping faucet and a dead man's chair. I was Margaret Whitmore, and I had finally come home. Not to a building, not to a family. To the only person who had been waiting for me all along. Myself. I turned off the lights. I got into bed. I pulled the covers up. And I slept the deep, dreamless sleep of a woman who would never again let anyone decide which refrigerator she belonged to.